Hello, everybody. We are now in the last office hours of the semester. Let me just double check to make sure this is okay. The last office hour. Okay, seems good. Okay, so we tried, Tony and I are at an event on the West Coast, and we tried to do joint office hours one last time of the semester. It's a little bit more interesting than just kind of having a monologue while speaking to the screen. Unfortunately, this event wasn't taking place at the hotel proper. It was a separate venue, which really didn't have any type of private places where we could just go and hide and have office hours. Whatever we found as an option, didn't have the internet. We came back ultimately to the hotel, and it was a similar situation, actually, that there really weren't any private or quiet places where we could do this that had reliable internet. So Tony's off to the conference now. Here I am to wrap things up, to give you some other input about the final exam and overall about the semester. So all the projects are in. The last assignment was submitted. The projects 1 and 3, also the grades are released. The grades for project 3 were released just a little while ago. Yesterday, Tony was waiting for a couple of more TAs to finalize and upload the grades so that they can collectively check and make sure that everything is consistent and release those. The grades for project 3 are out, and also the distribution of the grades. He has posted it. It's I think so far as projects 1 and 2 are concerned, overall the distribution is somewhat similar to what we've seen in the past. So at least from those 2 assignments, based on those grades and the midterm grade, we don't expect a major shift in what the grade distribution will look like. Maybe it's just for a little bit higher, but maybe compared to last semester. But if we look at a big enough number of semesters, I think it's similar. I think overall, kind of after the first 2 semesters, grades notched up a little bit, in part because I think that we were able to build out a little bit of a better support network, so that you guys can ultimately do better in the assignments. Project 4, the TAs will only start grading it now. One of the things that we said, it's we don't expect to, it will take us some time to finish all the assignments for grading all of the assignments. So please be patient. Typically, we are able to release the grades for project 4 at some point towards the later part of the week of the exam. So at some point later next week. So you'll still have time to see the grades and see the feedback, and then respond or send a message in case you have any concerns about the grade that you have earned and have some objections or need some clarifications. So what's left at this point are a few things. One of the things is that we are asking you, Patrick posted a message yesterday, we're asking you for some feedback explicitly on project 4. So he put a link with a project 4 survey. So whenever we make a major change in one of the projects, it's useful to get some feedback from the students and make sure we can improve it. The TAs have been great at driving these processes. So that's one thing. Please fill out the survey for the project, and then of course, any other informal feedback. I mean, I know that some of you took advantage of the READMEs. We did ask you to do that, to provide some feedback in that way. But anything else that you want to share in terms of your experience, thoughts, etc., please you can send that as a message on Piazza Visible to instructors. In addition to specifically for Project 4, in general, any feedback for the class, it's welcome via Piazza, or the other thing that we want to remind all of you, and we will send a message about this, reminder message, is the course instructor evaluation surveys that that the Institute administers. So please fill those out. For overall for the class and for all of us on the instructor team, myself and all of the TAs. We do know that it's a long survey given the number of staff of us on the instructor team. Anything specific that you want to highlight about the course, the TAs, myself, please do that. We do read these and we take that feedback and try to turn it into some actionable items. So that's as far as feedback goes. The other big item that's remaining is the final exam. So I'll talk a little bit more about the final exam now. And then that's from your part. And then the other, for us, it's basically finishing the grading of, well, starting and finishing the grading of Project 4, the exam, and overall the semester grades. So let me talk a little bit about the semester grades first, perhaps. One more time. So one of the things that we iterated is that the participation grade is something that it's really is not going to influence that you earn a lesser grade than what you would have earned based purely on your averages of your midterm and exam and of your project. And that it's really something that ends up influencing students that are kind of just below the cutoff grades and that maybe need a few extra points in order to get their grade up and their letter grade improved. So the way we'll do this next part is we'll finish grading Project 4. I'll finish grading the final exam. We'll take a look at all the grades, assuming that you've earned essentially the 5 points that the participation that this participation incurs. So we'll form the curves basically based on the performance from the projects and the exams, without really looking at any distribution of the grade of the projects, of the participation, and based on this is where we actually, once we establish what those cutoffs are, that's when I look at a number of students that are just below that grade, and that's when I bring this up with the rest of the TAs, and we take a look at both Piazza and Slack, and try to figure out whether the student has made contributions to the course in the form of participation that have earned them a boost in their grade. So that's going to go on probably for takes a couple of days for us to look at all those names. And so you will kind of, step by step, you will see your Project 4 grades, you'll see your final exam grades, and kind of a full credit grade for the participation, and then some of you may end up seeing some boost in the participation grade that will end up changing your final grade. One of the things that may happen is just because of how Canvas is configured, if we actually make a change in the grade that's beyond the full credit, that may kind of overall change the averages for and the grade distributions for the other students. So sometimes we just basically have to just explicitly overwrite the letter grade, and so what you will see in Canvas does not have to mean that that's the final grade. You will see the point grades for the exams and the projects, and those will be accurate. And then we will tell you what the cutoff ranges are for the letter grades between A and B, B and C. But your final grade, in case it was overwritten based on any additional extra credit or participation, that you may not be able to see until grades are formally released, and that's going to be on Tuesday, August 6th at noon Eastern time. So that's when officially grades are released. I know that students have some way of figuring out, even though at some point Monday afternoon, Monday evening, they have a way to see those grades. I've never been quite confident, A, whether how, where do you guys see those grades, and then B, whether those grades are the ones that are indeed the final grades that with any overrides that we have established. And so because I'm not sure where exactly are the students seeing the grades come Monday evening, so that would be August 5th. I'm not sure whether any overwrite that we make, whether that can indeed be visible, because I can imagine I could do the overwrite in Canvas proper, or I could just change the grade directly in Banner. And so depending on where exactly are you seeing these grades, I'm not sure whether you'll see it. Anyways, we do end up getting some emails from students that Monday immediately after the semester is officially over and grades are due, with some questions about the grades, and sometimes when I take a look, it turns out that the grade that the student's seeing is not the same as what we've assigned. As far as the grade distributions go, we will finalize those once we have all the grades for the semester, and we said it's typically the cutoff between A and B has been somewhere in the low 80s. The cutoff between B and C has somewhere been in the low 60s or thereabouts. Cutoff between B and C has been somewhere in the upper 40s. I think that nothing below really matters. So we have had this semester, unfortunately, some number of cases where the project submissions raised flags with our plagiarism detection tools. Those students have all been contacted by the TAs, at least the cases where this was something that happened for Project 1 or Project 3. Hopefully, there are not going to be any additional cases where this will be this will show up for Project 4. For any of those students, we've both contacted the student, and there's been a report that's been sent to the Office of Student Integrity. The Office of Student Integrity does additional investigation, and based on that investigation, there is a resolution in terms of how to move forward. In some cases, basically first offenders, they typically get 0 points on the assignment, and then that kind of impacts the final grade. Other cases, when if this is not the first incident, the consequences can be much more significant. The student is failing a class, student is on probation for some number of months, during which they have to go through some additional process in order to remove that probation. That involves either taking an ethics course at Georgia Tech, or taking some additional surveys, some additional communication with the Office of Student Integrity. We certainly hope that we're not going to have such a case among any of you, but we have seen it for we have seen it happen in the past. To highlight, this is not something that's unique to the online program. It happens on campus. It just happens always when there's students and assessment. It's just that the numbers in the online class are higher, and that's why sometimes it seems the numbers in terms of the students are higher, not as a percentage, not at all. It's just that it's a bigger pool of students. And then one of the things that happens in these cases, if the Office of Student Integrity, if they have not completed the process, either because of whatever student has not yet responded, or they've not yet scheduled the conference, or or whatever, or simply because they're backlogged on such requests. If we cannot assign a grade in those cases. So if you see a grade of incomplete, so as opposed to the usual letter grade, if you see an I as a letter grade, that means that because of a pending OSI investigation, we are not allowed to assign a grade. The letter grade remains an I until that completes. And then the process is, once we start getting the responses from OSI, at that point we submit the letter grade changes to a person within the College of Computing. That person that needs to take those changes and submit them to the registrar's office, and the whole process, it takes a few weeks from when actually we have kind of the first blessing to go ahead with a change of the incomplete until it actually gets propagated in the system. We will make a post on this just because to clarify, in case those students that are really affected by this don't watch office hours. But so I think that's all as far as any remaining grading related questions. Okay, so for the final exam, I've not finalized the exam. I try not to finalize the exams until after I complete the final office hours, final class when on campus before the exam. Just kind of not to be influenced by the questions and somehow lead students toward the questions and the answers that will be involved in the exam. So in terms of the format, we put a post on Piazza, just summarizing this. This is essentially same as what you saw at the midterm. The exam will be proctored by ProctorTrack and hosted in Canvas. The exam window will open on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So this is Thursday, July 25th. And you will have until Tuesday, July 30th, midnight anywhere on Earth to complete the exam. Just like with the midterm, when we configure both ProctorTrack and Canvas, you will see as a deadline for completing the exams midnight, July 30th. Eastern time zone. Neither one of the platforms doesn't allow kind of a fluid anywhere on Earth to be specified in the system. Moreover, when we have kind of immediately put the closing deadline based on the real intended closing deadline, that kind of shifts the date for pretty much everybody to be that following date. And then we've had instances where students kind of came to us on basically right after the exam closed, saying, "Oh, gee, I kind of focused on the date and I thought I had until midnight today, and so can you please open it?" And yes, we did open it, but it kind of defeats the purpose and affects fairness. So we keep the date to the date when kind of the intended date, midnight, and then we kind of adjust for the anywhere on Earth time closing during the actual day. So like at that point, we figured everybody has had a chance to take a look at the information and to just register that the exam is closing indeed on that Tuesday, just anywhere on Earth. The process will be similar. Whenever you're ready, you will log into ProctorTrack. Then ProctorTrack will confirm your identity, will provide you with a 4-digit access code. This is the access code that you need in order to start the exam in Canvas. The reason for this is to make sure that you don't actually, by mistake, start the exam without enabling the proctoring, because then that leads to other questions and concerns. And then you take the exam, make sure that you don't submit it prematurely, go through all the questions, submit it, and then only once you've submitted the exam, only then end the proctoring and give ProctorTrack a chance to upload the video. This will, again, take some time. It will actually be even slower than what you saw during the midterm, because during the midterm, all of the courses in the program that use ProctorTrack, we're not necessarily taking the final exam, taking the midterm exam during that same week, whereas with the final exams, everybody's taking the final exams approximately on the same days. And so there is a even higher load. The exams tend to be a little bit longer. So you know how it for some of you, it appeared that it took several hours, maybe even a day, for ProctorTrack to update its status and to say, yes, you have that you have taken the exam. For the final, we've even seen it go into way into the second day before ProctorTrack updates its status and says correctly that to show correctly that you have taken the test. So don't panic for this. It's just something that we don't have control over, but we've seen it routinely happen. If ProctorTrack crashes in the process or hangs, sometimes just restarting your computer and then opening the ProctorTrack again, it will complete the upload process. The exam, the final exam will be 2 hours, will be configured for 2 hours. ProctorTrack will be configured for slightly more, just so that you have a little bit of time to maybe figure out what's going on. And then ProctorTrack is configured so that it can be multiple. You can kind of log in multiple times into ProctorTrack, but the exam itself, it's a one-time exam, right? So you have only a one time to take the exam. 2 hours, about 15 questions. I expect that for many of you, it will take way less than 2 hours. And then once the exam closes, in terms of what you can do during the exam, similar as with the midterm, you can, it will be closed notes, closed books, closed internet. You can use pencil scratch paper. You can use kind of an old-fashioned calculator, physical calculator. You can use a note-taking application on your laptop, desktop, or calculator on your calculator application on your laptop or desktop. Not allowed to use a phone except for if you need it for the two-factor authentication when you're first logging in. Not allowed to use earphones, kind of any other devices, single monitor, etc. So the usual things, the same sort of things that we were there for the midterm exam. The exams, I said, it will be about 15 questions. Questions will be worth anywhere from 5 points until 15 points. Most of the questions, the incremental point value at which you will earn points will be smaller, so in the order of a couple of percent. Maybe there will be a question that will have sort of 5-point value, but for the most part, we'll try to we try to keep these at smaller increments. You earn credit both for providing correct answers, and then depending on the type of question, you earn credit for not providing incorrect answers. And this particularly refers to the multiple choice, multiple selection questions. Clearly, if we don't do this, the student can just mark all responses, and then it's guaranteed that the correct response will be one of the selected. So this is why we give you credit for correctly selecting the correct responses, and also for not selecting the incorrect choices. So the format of the questions will be similar as with the midterm. So multiple choice, multiple selection, fill in the blanks, maybe kind of select the correct answer from a drop-down menu, as opposed to, so you can think of those as fill in the blanks with a keyword, where the keyword is what you're selecting from the drop-down menu. In some cases, there may be kind of a single multiple choice question that has a single answer. I think kind of this would be the type of questions for some of the questions that are kind of the fill in the blanks. You may have also questions that involve some computations where you need to complete the answer and complete some computation, and then complete the answer. Remember, we explained this with the midterm exam, that there are some issues with the ability of Canvas to deal with numerical answers, so that the kinds of questions that it supports numerical questions with numerical answers, but only in the simplest form. Just you can kind of ask a single question that has a single numerical answer, and so if you want to ask another, if you want that question to have a B, well, that has to be another question, and that kind of breaks up the kinds of exams that we can give. So in these kind of multiple fill in the blank type of questions, it doesn't really allow us to use numerical values, and because of that, it looks at the answers as character arrays and does a string comparison. So we deal with this when we grade the exam, and just like with the midterm, we grade the exam not automatically by relying solely on Canvas, but we download the responses from Canvas, and then we configure all the scripts that parse your answers and grade your answers. And so we account for this correctly. The one thing that you will see when we do open, when we make in Canvas, when we make it visible for you to see your answers, you will also see from that Canvas marks as incorrect some responses that did indeed earn you maybe full credit. So for instance, in the midterm, it was an example was that it was not recognizing, let's say, 0.65 as a correct answer, whereas correct answers were everything from 0.6 to 0.7. Looking for explicitly 0.6 or 0.7, then it would have marked things correctly, but not otherwise. So we deal with that. Just basically don't panic when you see some of the responses from some of the assessment that Canvas interprets, and sometimes Canvas interprets responses to be incorrect, whereas in fact we've given you full credit. This is not pinned. Just take a look at the kinds of questions. So there are 10 modules in the second part of the semester, parts 3 and parts 4. The final exam will be related to content from these lectures. The kinds of questions can be related to material presented in the lecture videos, and that's drawn either just from our explanations that are fairly generic, and you can find them in any OS textbook, or from some of the papers, some of the research papers that we used in some of those lessons where we spent a little bit more time discussing maybe some parts of those papers. Like before, you are only responsible really from the parts of the papers that were discussed in the lectures. In some cases, these papers are much longer and involve some other sections, or maybe make some other contributions that really were not the core reasons why the paper was selected to be used with that lecture. So the parts that you're responsible for are the parts that are most related to the given lesson. We may ask also questions that are related to the projects 3 and project 4, though these will not be programming questions. So at most, what you can get will be something that's kind of a simple piece of code, and you need to provide an answer about maybe what that piece of code does, or what it does incorrectly, or what it doesn't do correctly, or something like that. Something similar to what you saw in the midterm exam, but you will not have programming questions. You will also not have essay questions. Especially with the final exam, there is a much shorter period of time during which the exams have to be graded and the grades submitted. So there's just simply no time for us to deal with essay questions. The TAs will be busy with creating project 4, and so can't rely really on their help. That takes time between looking at the evaluation from the autograder, to manually grading some of the assignments, to the README, to putting everything together, making sure things are consistent. So I'm grading the final exam, and we have to make sure that we finish these in a reasonable amount of time. So I'm going to have to make sure that the questions are as autogradable as possible. I will put in some cases kind of an explicit plea for you not to use commas in your answers. It is for questions that have multiple answers in them, like whether it's multiple choice or whether it's multiple selection. One of the annoying things with Canvas is that it uses comma to separate those answers when we download the exam. And so if we need to somehow parse that, we need to be looking for the commas and parsing around those commas. And then if the responses include commas as well, that creates a major disaster and slowdown. Basically makes the response not deterministically parsable, right? So it's we have to resort at that point to a manual process. And so hopefully at some point Canvas will get updated to use some more unique delimiter and to make it easier to separate these. The tool that we used before used the vertical bar. We've used Canvas. We've used ProctorTrack once at least in the past, or a couple of times in the past, to host the exam as well. And that too uses, I don't remember what it uses now, but uses something more creative than a Colma to separate the answers. So that's kind of overall on the exam. In terms of on the content, I think at this point you saw the kinds of questions we were asking with the midterm, so you have probably a good understanding of the level at which how you need to study the material and what really you need to focus on. The questions are more testing your understanding of the concepts and the mechanisms, understanding maybe why a particular design evolved in a certain way, how things work, as opposed to a concrete, oh, give me the API for such and such, for some scenario. So we'll avoid those types of questions so that you can kind of focus on making sure that you understand the takeaways from the lesson and what we were trying to, what were the main concepts, as opposed to maybe focusing on like some of the quizzes where we're asking you to take a look at like specific Linux API system call or something like that. We're not going to have those kinds of questions. So if you feel that you need to be memorizing something, that's probably really not what you need to do. The goal is really for you to be able to understand things. I see often students trying to derive formulas, how to compute, something, maybe like some metric, some throughput metric for the execution of some schedule. My advice would be for you to maybe focus on trying to understand how would you measure throughput, what are the two factors that the useful work versus the overall work, and then so that you can be able to, just looking at some execution, you can figure out, well, what components of this contribute to the useful work part, what components of this contribute to all the other work that need to go into kind of the other element of the equation, and then kind of put the two together. So that's probably is going to have much longer term impact when you're trying to think about system design, solving problems, as opposed to trying to distill a formula and use a formula and memorize it for the exam. And I think that the amount of time that we allocate for the exam is sufficiently useful for you to be able to kind of go through that process and think about the lecture and maybe derive what those factors should be and use that. We for the material we provided the we provided all of the we provided review questions. You don't have to think about. So my suggestion, and actually there is a student that posted a final exam study strategy on Piazza just now, and so I'm looking at that comment, and what I like about that comment is that the student puts as the first few numbers advice of go look at the videos, look at the summaries of the videos, etc., and only then does it put a comment on, well, now look at the review questions. And so this is our advice as well. Don't take the review questions and then try one by one to look at the answers for those questions in the videos, because the review questions are not given to you as okay, here are these questions, and the questions or the exam will be drawn from here, right? The questions on the exam will be drawn from the material in the lectures, and the review questions are really trying to highlight the kinds of concepts, the content that you're really most responsible for and should have really captured. But that doesn't mean that there is absolutely nothing else from the lectures that may end up on the exam. So from that perspective, just make sure that you don't use the review questions as a sort of as a cheat sheet over, okay, this is the only content that I really need to focus on. You'll probably have a lot of points if you just do that, and if you make sure that those review questions you understand well. But it's a review question, doesn't mean that it really is going to capture everything that can possibly make its way on the exam. So my recommendation is make sure you go through the videos. In the videos, there are clearly some parts that you can maybe more easily skip, as you know that there are maybe some aspects that when it's kind of very, very specific to or maybe a quiz that's very specific to find the system calls for X, and maybe you can skip that unless there is really some bigger explanation as to how X works, which is the more important part of the lesson, as opposed to what X specifically syntactically looks like. The other thing that could be a useful hint to you when you're studying is, we have lessons that have far more content. For instance, the scheduling lesson, the synchronization lesson. We spend much more time here, both on some more high-level background and some concrete, some more details on some concrete algorithms, concrete data structures, and then we have some aspects that are covered from a research paper, etc. So you'll probably have some more questions maybe on those that are related to, or there'll be total in the exam. There will be more points that will be drawn from those lessons, as opposed to maybe I don't know, the lesson that's on the last lesson that's on data center technologies, for instance, on the P4L4, that's kind of cloud technologies. So if you're going to have to skip through a lesson because you don't have enough time to study all the lessons at in the same level of detail, don't skip one of these lessons that we spend much more time. What else should I tell you? I mean, you can assume that you will have questions from every single one of the lessons. They'll be worth different number of points, and there are 10 lessons. If I tell you there'll be about 15 or so questions, clearly there'll be questions. There'll be on some of the lessons there'll be more than one question. So you can assume that much. I think that that's about it as far as any overall feedback on the information about the exam or studying about the exam goes. You're not going to have any explicit questions related to the first part of the course. So part 1 and part 2, the lectures, you won't have a direct question on that. Hopefully you have not forgotten those concepts. I'm sure they will, they may help you with how you answer the questions in this exam and in the future. But we're not going to explicitly ask questions that refer to any of the earlier lessons. Once the exam closes, you don't discuss the answers immediately on Piazza or in any other forum, Slack, Google Groups, whatever else. sometimes during the exam window, we don't have currently any special arrangements for any student, but sometimes we have some students end up with some emergency during the exam window. We have to make last minute some other arrangements. These have to involve some proper documentation and dean of students. If something like that happens, make sure you notify us immediately. Put a private post on Piazza visible to instructors so that one of us can see it immediately and react to it. And so for students who complete the exam, you'll have to wait until we acknowledge that everybody has completed the exam, and now you can discuss it on Piazza, but not sooner than that. We ask that, and so yeah, so at some point afterwards, when we're finished grading, we will make sure that you can see your responses, and we will provide you with the actual responses, like we did with the midterm. So you'll be able to do some self-assessment there as well. If you run into any technical issues during the exam, also make sure that you post this, alert us via private post. In some cases, the technical issues really need to be resolved with ProctorTrack, so you make sure that you deal with them as well. But if there is anything on our end that where we need to get involved, notify us immediately via a private post on Piazza. And I think that that's probably everything that I need to tell you at this point. It's been a little bit quieter class than in the past, and certainly with office hours, we tend to it goes both ways. Sometimes we have classes where we really don't have a chance to go through all the questions that students post on the office hours thread within just the time of the office hours. And sometimes we have semesters like this one when it's a little bit quieter. I don't think it correlates in any way with summer or winter. It always tends to be quieter after project deadlines or around holidays, but normally, not this quiet as it has been this semester. So for those of you that are continuing in future classes, and I do advise you to take advantage of the office hours as well to maybe start some conversation or steer the conversation during office hours to topics that most interest you, whether it's specifically related to the course or something else, and having some seeds on what to talk about for an hour always helps as far as the instructors holding or the office hours are concerned. And then, yes, please complete the surveys, provide feedback. We appreciate having all of you in class, and we wish you success with the final exam, this class, other courses in this program in the future. If you happen to be on campus, drop by. I always enjoy meeting students that we've had in the class. And if you want to if you appreciated the TA's involvement, if you appreciated this class, in particular, if you appreciated the TA's involvement and want to give back and would like to be considered for a TA for future semesters, please do so. You can send a message to me, or you can talk to the TAs, get a sense from them of what's involved, and they will also refer some students that they know are interested and would like to get involved. You see what our TA roster looks like. We have some veterans that have been around for for a few years, and then we have I'm not sure we added a new TA this semester, but we have several TAs who only started last semester, and so we keep adding fresh blood in the TA pool all the time. That's what makes it fun. We all learn from that, and I think that all of the new additions help improve the course. So to bring different perspective, and we value that a lot. So whether it's for this class or for other classes in the program, I think that having TAs that come from the students in the program is what's really very, very valuable. So again, good luck. Thanks for being part of this semester. We know that summer is a bit of a intense ride, and we take that into consideration also when finalizing the assessment grades. So we appreciate you being determined and brave to stick around through the summer semester. Good luck in the future, and hope to get a chance to meet many of you in different contexts. Okay, bye-bye.